May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive. This episode of May the Life Force Be With You is brought to you by Moment Company and the Moment Pebble. The Moment Pebble is a beautiful, natural stone, light-guided breathing device and is a unique gift for someone who needs that gentle reminder to stop and take a break, to take moments throughout their busy day and to practice mindfulness. Just head over to momentcompany.co, that's momentcompany.co, and enter the code LIFEFORCE at checkout to receive an exclusive 10% podcast discount.
Welcome to May the Life Force Be With You. And the intention for today's conversation is that more of you gets activated by listening to wherever we go in this conversation.
So today's episode, I am very excited to welcome Lara Waldman, a.k.a. the Abundance Activator. And Lara is a wealth coach, manifestation expert. She has her own podcast, the Money Manifestation Mastery podcast. So no pressure, Karila, here. And she's also the author of Money Manifestation Mastery. There's a lot of M's there. And the creator of Living Abundance Mastermind. So I'm very excited about this as well, because Lara brings together the healer and spiritual coach side of her experience to really help business owners, entrepreneurs, investors, and I'm guessing people in general. I'm guessing you don't have to own your own business to get excited by what you can achieve around financial success when you're guided by your soul and you understand your wealth, inner wisdom. So originally from Vancouver, Lara is now residing in London, and we are delighted that she's joining us here on the podcast today. So hi, Lara.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me on.
Really happy you're here. I've been in spaces with Lara many times, and it is always like so I'm a bit scared about what's going to be activated for me and everybody listening. But we'll see what happens.
Sorry about that. Tried to keep the lid on that for a very long time, and it turns out that that's how I actually shut down my life force, my powerful abundance activator self. Full meal deal is really how we get this party started, right? Getting our life force energy flowing. But absolutely, it's quite funny because that, like, if Karila said that to me 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh no, right? Hide that part. Too much. And it's been a really interesting journey to just embrace the fact that, yes, I do powerful transformational work and I can't help it. And I'm sorry.
No, we're here for this.
Her energy just comes in and is like alchemy. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because money brings up everything else. You know, it's like you think you're going to do some work on your bank balance, and then it ends up being about your childhood trauma or your how you receive love or your sexual energy. It's like money really brings up everything else. And we've actually talked on the show before about how there's such a correlation between our relationship with money and our relationship with our own life force energy. And so I'm really excited to see what unfolds from this conversation.
So Lara, what does life force energy mean to you when you think about what life force energy is?
Well, yes, it's been an area that I've been working on for a long time. And I guess it's still like the greatest mystery or adventure in uncovering and discovering more and more of it. But what I do know is I've psychically been able to see how energy flows through people's bodies for, over 20 years now. And I could see that when we were in an alignment or in connection with our true authentic self, something that I call heart, body, soul aligned wealth, or that heart, body, soul aligned alignment, where we're connected to the universal energy, to our body, to the energetic centers in our body and the planet, this incredible flow of energy starts happening, which is called the toroidal field. This natural flow is happening through our body, and this beautiful dance between the universe, our bodies, the planet, and all of life. And what I can see psychically is the interplay of that and the dance between all of life, and that we're very much part of like a collective energetic system or a collective nervous system, if you like, that it's not separate. It's absolutely interconnected. And when I connect with my clients in that way, or help my clients get into alignment with their abundance or that true life force energy or my own, it feels like heaven on earth. It's like, it is literally my heaven on earth. But the interesting thing is I'll get my clients into that state when we're working together. I can get myself into that state. But the thing that I've been most interested in is, why does it then shut down within like an hour, a day, a few days, a week? Like, why do we collapse against it? And what breaks that flow? And so if our true nature is this interconnection and dance with all of life, what stops it? So I've actually probably spent more of the last 20 years going, like, what is stopping our life force energy from flowing? I call it our wealth frequency, but it's kind of the same thing. So so I would say that I can see it psychically, this, like I was just explaining, but our lived experience as a human being, right, through our bodies, our business, our bank accounts, our life, it doesn't necessarily flow like that most of the time. So I'm sort of like, I've been obsessed with like, how do we get more into that flow state or come back into connection with our true life force energy, like what it wants to be, what it's designed to be, and why is it so difficult? Right. So I've been really working from that point of view, and it's been like the great experiment and the great challenge of of the last 2 decades.
And what you said, you were like looking for what causes that, because I totally resonate with that, by the way. Like, yeah, you're in the ceremony, you're in the flow state, you're like feeling the abundance of the whole universe. And then you go out into your like 3D life. You feel the opposite. And actually I've started to notice the like where my energy body shuts down, and so I was just wondering, in your 20 years of exploring that, what would you say are the main causes of that shutdown?
Gosh, so interesting. And like, I just want to say, like, this is like the great experiment. I'm like a detective, just still kind of figuring it out. So I'll never say like, this is it and this is why and blah, blah, blah. But what I have found, well, I'll just speak for myself. So we were Kareli and I were at my Living Abundance Live in London, this 2-day event where like day one, we were like busting through all the blocks that were, stopping that flow. And then day 2, we were like pumping. It was sort of like much more activated. Everyone was much more connected to their life force energy. The flow was happening. And to me, it starts to feel like my heaven on earth. And I'm like, yes. And it's this sort of deep and intimacy and deep connection. And then like, everything is possible in that space. And I just feel the incredible power of, manifestation and creation happening. And then I came home to my husband and my 2 teenage kids, and I was like super high. I was like, woo, feeling amazing. And then I noticed that there's this kind of crash that can happen where it's like the come down, because when we're kind of getting high on a level in this beautiful energy, and I've been thinking about this, like, I've thought about this so many times, like what's happening there. And what I find is that my energetic system is reacting and responding to other energetic systems. So when I'm with someone whose life force is flowing, right, and their energy is flowing, then my energy is flowing, and it just kind of starts to build, and then there's this incredible increase in energy. So if I can be exhausted, but if I get into connection with someone where their life force is flowing, I will just suddenly, like, my energy will rise. Equally, when I then go into connect with someone whose energetic system is more shut down, let's say their life force is not flowing, and there's all sorts of reasons why that is, but one I have found is when we're not processing our emotions, when there's like a kind of energetic constipation, which is unprocessed feeling, unprocessed emotion, it creates a sort of stuckness. So this is what I spent 2 days in this really powerful vortex. My husband hadn't, and he was kind of like a bit more not quite with me. And I was like in this pumping energy, and he wasn't. And so we had this place where we couldn't quite connect. We connected, but not on the depth that I'd been connecting with this full pump of this life force energy all weekend. And then my system reacts, and it's almost like it kind of goes into a contraction or a reaction against another system. So I'm calling it a system because I see everything in terms of energetic systems, whether it's our body or whether it's in business or whether it's in our bank account or whether it's in, political systems or global systems. I'm feeling where the stuckness is and the shutdown is. And then it becomes quite hard to flow within a stuck system. So then we either react against a system, or we conform to that system. So then what my energy body knows how to do is to adapt into someone else's energetic system to create connection. But what I do is I then have to dim it. I dim my life force down in order to connect. And then there's a big cost to me because it dims my energy. It usually makes me feel like flatter, lower energy, or I might get sad or, frustrated, right? And then there's this kind of like stuckness. And I was realizing the practice for me is always like, I've got to stop reacting and responding to other people's energetic systems and come back into my flow. And I know this, I teach this. This is like, I think I know a lot, but it's sort of, we're highly sensitive, we're highly attuned, and that energy is wanting to merge. So I'm going to stop there because I've said quite a lot of things, but that's how I'd answer that question for now.
I really like the visuals you gave with that. I am tempted to challenge and say that I also had a crash after the weekend because we were high, we were high on big dreams and soulful conversations and new ways of doing business. And I also had a crash, but I live alone. So what I want to know is what was I participating into? I have a theory. Okay. I'll let you speak first, Fiona, because I'm intrigued about what you want to say.
Well, I was just going to say that you guys were on this course, this event together. I was on my own hanging out in Melbourne. I used to live in Melbourne. I had a great time in Melbourne, so connected to my lovely friends that live there. It was just the best time. And I meditated on the beach on my last day, totally on my own. I felt high as a kite. And I was telling Karila before that I literally, my meditation felt like I was 50 foot high and I'd taken over the whole beach. Like my energy was so big. And then I had a massive crash today. So isn't that interesting that we've had this experience on different parts of the world, different reasons? I was doing this on my own. You guys were in that collective, but I too have had a crash. And I'm in a house with other people, but I believe my crash is my internal thoughts. So my thought pattern, my belief has got knocked somehow from that bliss state that I was in Melbourne. And then I've come back to a work crash environment and gone, boof, I've lost the mojo again. How do I get it back? So I was just going to reflect how interesting it was. We've all had a similar experience. But
we all crashed. I think my theory is that when I came home, your home is like your part of your habitual level. And I crashed because I came back to the old level of life force energy, and like immediately went back to like, oh, I know this, or, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of my theory on it, really. But I feel like we have as I'm speaking, I'm like, we have a range of our life force energy. Hey, so like when you go to an event or have like an amazing beach moment meditation, maybe you're increasing your range, and that's why it's so important to do these practices and do this stuff, because you're like expanding your range of the life force energy that you can flow through you. But then you have your habitual habitual level. Yeah. And that one is quite, or certainly for me, is quite a lot lower than the range, like the height of the range, and so the crash is pretty intense, actually, pretty hard. I don't know if you two resonate with that. But.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for the last day, 24 hours, is kind of about what I talk about quite a bit is expanding our capacity to receive. So like that, stretching that capacity. So we all had this big stretch of like this expanded space, and then it's almost like we blow up the balloon and then the air comes out of the balloon. But it is, I think, about habitual patterns. So I guess that could be explained through neuroscience, or like the hardwiring of our brain, and like I guess you call it our survival brain or habitual aspects. And what I've noticed is, particularly when I get tired, which, I'll get super expanded, but I also need to rest. Like, I think rest is really, really important for the integration of it and the rewiring and the integration of that big, expansive work. So yesterday, my guidance was like, you need to rest, like deep rest, which means go in and down. And because I was so excited from the event, there was a temptation to want to like go out, but it was all go in, and was like nature walks and I ran a bath, and I went and had a sauna and steam and jacuzzi. And it was like, you have to take this big energy now and then integrate it as your new normal. So it's almost like new ground. But what I noticed is then the old stories start coming up. So my story, my very hardwired pattern is kind of feeling alone in the universe, too much. Like, as Chris was saying, my energy is powerful, but that part of me, I mean, it's taken me a long time to own it, because there was so much shame and then so much pain inside of there. Like my trauma, like, trauma I've had to overcome, but so much shame about who I actually am and what I actually can do. And I actually had a vulnerability hangover after that event, because I showed up and I was doing my thing more publicly than I ever had before. I did reveal like what I do in front of a group of people in a way that I haven't done before on that level. And I was like, this sort of vulnerability hangover, I had these waves of like shame and these waves of fear. And I was like, I can't believe I just like showed everyone that that's what I do, So, and then it was sort of like this integration, because that part of me, that's where my trauma lies. Like that part of me was shamed, she was shamed, was abandoned, was ridiculed, was hurt and harmed. So where my life force is, or that energy is, that power is, or my gifts are, is something that for most of my life has not been, I call, heard, held, and honored. Like it was absolutely the opposite. So I had no mentorship. I had no didn't know how to live in this world, And so, and I've been on a slow and long, painful journey to figure this out and then help others to do the same, etc. But sometimes I notice when I go back and then I'm alone again, that story gets activated. Like the hardwiring's going, like, too much, too intense. Whoa, you went too far. Like, and then go back into my habitual place, like the home or the area that I live in London. And then it's like, oh God, yeah, it all gets reinforced because that part of me doesn't quite, in some areas, isn't as fully expressed in some parts of my life and other parts of my life. So for me, that's where I noticed it wasn't as hard as crash as it has been in the past, but I just noticed this kind of collapsing on myself a little bit happening, which I think was partly required because I needed to rest, right? I needed to go in, and then partly needing to hold the old stories, the old very hardwire patterns that were kind of starting to get activated a little bit. So that's what I noticed with my crash.
And there is so much loneliness and shame around money, hey? Like, it's, certainly in this country, in the UK, like, your class, your tribe, like, who you resonate with is so connected to money. It's a weird consciousness we've got in this country where it's like your people are these people. Do you know what I mean? And trying to break through that, trying to break through the class barriers, trying to even saying, actually, I want to have wealth, or I want to be wealthy. Like you literally feel like you're about to be like attacked for saying that, or stoned, like persecuted, especially in a lot of the people you help. It's people doing like soulful business or spiritual, and there's just this thing of like, oh my god, if I also want to make money out of doing this good thing in the world, then I'm a really bad person and everybody's going to hate me and I'm going to lose my people, and like, it's huge what it brings up.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. And I've been in different scenes. Like, I've been and I grew up around a lot of money where that was normal, but for me, the life force was shut down. And then I went deep into the spiritual community where the life force was pumping, but there was this real disconnection from reality, and everyone was broke and kind of ineffective in a sense. Like, we were doing like all this deep energetic work, but like it wasn't landing in the material world. And then my guidance was like, we need to bridge the gap between wealth and spirituality. And I was like, turns out it's a little bit more challenging than I thought. The vision looked really great. And I was like, okay, how do we integrate? It's basically the physical with the spiritual. And money's just, it's like a way to play with a much deeper and more profound experience, which I think is about deep integration and embodiment and coming home to our true, aligned, authentic expression. But money's part of it. So I was lying there. But now I'm still around people who have a lot of money. But if I'm talking about money and saying I want to be wealthy, it's a shameful thing. And so I've had to overcome judgment from everywhere in order to claim my wealth and be like, yes, I'm creating money. I'm creating a lot of money, and I love money, and I want to work with money. I was lying in the bath this morning going, I love money. I love money so much. And for me, it's just pure life force energy, and it loves me. And I was like, all the ways that I love it and it loves me. And I was like, because I get to give it to people that I love. I get to receive it from people I love. I get to create experiences. I get to exchange value. I get to feed, and I get to nurture my team. I get to be nurtured. It was like, and it's life force energy, right? Just flowing. And yet to say it is a shameful thing, and to want it is a shameful thing. So now I know, like, I've worked through mountains of shame to be able to know it, say it, claim it. I had this very secretly for a long time, because I was like, my guidance showed this to me. My heart consciousness, my soul's consciousness showed this to me. Lara was like absolutely like locked away from this thing. So isn't this interesting? It's so interesting. So I'm having to like take a bold and brave stance and be willing to be judged and persecuted and misunderstood. And I have been, but like, to be honest, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. But because I know what it is, it's life force energy. So what I know is when people reject money, they're shutting off an aspect of themselves.
They're shutting off some of their life force energy.
They're 100%. And so if in the rejection of money, you reject an aspect of yourself. And this is the thing, there's some kind of shame around life force, being truly alive and allowing that energy to flow through, because it's kind of like a sexual energy, isn't it? It's being turned on, lit up, ignited. And so for me, a lot of these old systems shut off, like even the system of wealth. We think of money, sex, power, all of it the old system has really shut off that life force energy and that natural connection. So it's like a reclaiming of something through the old systems. It's like we're pumping, like what I see is we need to pump our life force energy into the system, starting with our own inner system and then bridging out.
So I've got to ask Lara, because I know people that are listening are going to say, so how do I get wealthy? What do I need to do? Tell me the magic. What's the alchemy?
Well, yes, it is. What I want to say is it's a deep, rich, and powerful journey. Get ready to have your ass kicked, right? Get ready for deep transformation, because this is the one thing, again, I had a lot of shame about and was fear about it. I was like, yeah, people, they want money or they want wealth or they want love or whatever they want. They want health. But what we don't want is to face everything in the way of that. So a lot of it, I mean, for me, the first thing is getting really clear on what you want and why you want it. And the journey that I take people on is to understand that your wealth lives within you. Your wealth lives within you. It starts within you. The gold is within. But we get obsessed. And this is where I think the whole money and greed stuff gets really distorted, is because when we're disconnected from our true wealth, when we're not connected to our inner wealth, we take. We take from outside because we are in lack. So then we have to grab, we have to take, we have to suck someone else's life force from them, right? In order to, and this is, you can see this in so many ways. But the way that we flip that is to understand, if you understand that you are truly wealthy, and we come back into connection with our inner wealth, that we don't have to take from anyone or anything. We just can flow with it. But that's a nice idea. The integration of that is a whole other game, because it means the dismantling, the healing, the transforming of everywhere you cut off from your true wealth, right? And there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of beliefs, there's a lot of patterns that run very deep, that keeps us in separation of what I would say is our true nature. And there's a lot, there's sometimes can feel like a lot to sift through. I have found that there is actually a really clear, clean, and relatively fast way to do it. But it can be, it's like a real coming home and unhooking from all these old ideas, thoughts, beliefs, patterns, programs. So that's the sort of the start of the inner game. But you have to also, to reclaim that wealth, sometimes what we do is we project out. So we need to be like, what is it that I want? I want that love from another person. I want that money in my bank. I want that business success. I want this, that, and the other. We project out because we can't fully find it within. But how we manifest, how we create, is we actually understand that the inner activation starts within, and then we create without. And then it's a co-creation between yourself and others, and in yourself and life. So there's a few steps, but that's just like the fundamental principle to answer your question to begin with.
It's knowing what you want, why you want it. And what I'm hearing is truly feeling how that aligns with your life force.
Yeah. So when I first started playing with money manifestation, it came through my guidance. It came through my soul self, because that's where I had my connection. I was disconnected from myself and my body. So my guidance, my soul was telling me multi-millions. It was like 10 million is what I needed to start playing with. And I was so broke. I was like this broke healer. So it was very, very far away from where I was. I did not understand, because I was like, I don't need that much money. What the hell is going on? But slowly but surely, I started to realize that it's about our outer wealth is mirroring our inner wealth, and it's about life force. So anytime I tried to make it like $2,000 a month or $5,000 a month, it just felt like I was being squashed and squeezed. Except in grounded reality, that's great. And yes, there's a difference between the money that's flowing through my business and flowing through my life and the amount that I pay myself. They are different amounts. But what I realized is that when I limited it too much, it limited my own life force, because my energetic system is much more vibrationally aligned to multi-millions than it is to like $5,000. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. It's like, why limit yourself to, if I remember a few years ago, I coached someone and I asked her what her goal was. And she said, just to get by. She said, what's minimum wage? You know, when she was launching her business. And I'm like, why do you care about what minimum wage is? What do you want from your business? What does success actually feel like? And you're right. We go for the practical. Oh, I'll be okay if I just get this amount. That feels reasonable. I'm not asking for too much, and I won't be disappointed because it's a realistic, and I'm using the finger, a realistic amount. But when you said that about 10 million and that representing your energy, it representing the possibility and this, the size of the prize, then that makes complete sense to me. Let's not cut ourselves off before we've even got going. Be limitless.
Yeah, I love this idea that it's life force, like this is about life force. I can feel some of the listeners, I can feel the activation in this, and some of the listeners are like squirming. They're like, what do you mean 10 million? Like life for, because we're so conditioned into poverty. We're so conditioned into enough. I have a massive problem with enough. My guides are like, enough does not exist. It creates a double negative. You cannot be enough because you are more than enough. And if you go for enough, what are you manifesting other than something that doesn't exist, something invisible? But we're very conditioned to it. And so like this idea that like of opening up to more than enough, I can feel the churning that's happening underneath in the listeners and in this conversation and in this activation. And I want to say that one of the things that Lara does is she's really good at getting you to connect to the why, because just having a load of energy move through you, like that's also quite intense. Like, yeah, like what are you, like the why. And it wasn't actually this time, it was in the year before, the same event the year before. And one of the whys that really stilled my churning waters that came through it was that it tips the balance. Like the world, the balance of the planet is only going to be tipped when the people that are heart and soul aligned welcome in the same, or if not more, energy flow into their projects as the people that are harvesting all of the money and all of the energy. Like there isn't really another way to fix the situation other than tip the balance. And like for me, when you connect to that level of service, that level of why, suddenly you're like, yeah, actually 10 million's not enough. Like I need to bring in more energy into this project that is helping and doing good things,
Well, yeah, I've been guided to work with 100 million now. So I haven't really said that out loud publicly, but here we go.
Again.
100 million, baby. But the thing is that I think what's really important that I've understood about money is this is about exchanging of value. So if I limit how much money I'll allow to flow through me, my body, my business, my bank account, I limit my impact. Because money flowing through my life and my business is about connecting with other people. It's about connection. It's about pumping life force energy through other people's bodies, businesses, bank accounts, right? Into other people's lives. And it's really about activating. So I do call myself the Abundance Activator. It's about activating that flow of abundance. So if I limit that, if I say, I'm just going to be in enough, right? I'm just going to have my 5K a month for my business for me, just for me, which is fine. And yes, we need to be well paid. And I don't need, like, to be honest, I don't know, the lifestyle that I want, I'm quite happy with like 10K a month. That's fine. But in terms of like my impact of what I'm here to do, there's how much I pay myself, which is one thing. what I need to thrive, what I need for my life force energy to be pumping and strong so I can show up and serve, right? That's for me, the money that I pay myself is about what do I need as the systems and structures of support so I can frigging show up and lead and share and give. So it's like the foundations that feed me so I can feed into the collective energetic system, right? And I've realized there's a certain amount that I need to receive so I can pump this energy out. If I don't, I burn out, right? And I burnt out so many times. So, and if I don't make sure that I'm well fed and well resourced, I crash and then my life force energy crashes and then my impact crashes. Where if I allow myself to be pumped with all the resources and support and money's just a way to like get all that support and resources right now.
Like, I do want to say it's not the only way. Like, if you have that much life force energy flowing through you, then those resources can come through money, but they can come through other ways.
100%. Yeah.
This is about the manifesting current, not, I think there's a little bit of obsession that money is the only way.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's about, to be honest, it's really about being open to receive from everything and everywhere and everyone and not rejecting anything. So, but there's so much distortion around money and so much confusion around it. I actively get people to work with it because there's so much confusion, but 100% it's not just money, but it's about including and allowing it as well. And understanding that it's all part of the same, whether it's love, money, right? It can come in so many ways. And one of them is to pay for it. For me, it's really been so valuable to be able to just pay to be held, pay to receive, pay to just like, sometimes I just need to collapse into someone else's holding so I can kind of just receive, you know? And so for me, when I get to pay someone or something to just hold me, it's really, really important. Just as an example. But the point of what I'm sharing is that when we limit, like when you limit how much you receive, you really limit also how much you can give. And then you limit your impact. And so not everyone is going to, you know, I know I'm a little bit intense. I'm like going full life force this lifetime, like, you know, just playing against the edges of it. But I think this is about, you know, just playing with your capacity, right? Just playing with energy. Like how much can you allow in? How much can you flow out? And I have learned that it is a muscle, as in it is, it's like climbing a mountain or like going to the gym. Like you've got to start with where you are. And it's like, you can't just go from nothing to like lifting like 200 pounds, right? You got to build into it. But helping your brain to understand, like, for me, it's about watching where you collapse against yourself and where you want to contract against your life force is, I think most of the work is there because that's mostly what we do to it. We're like, yes, and then clamp down. And yes, and then clamp down. And so I'm like, hey, what if we play with possibility and just what if we don't do the clamp down? Like where does this energy want to flow and how does it want to grow? And it's not actually at the end of the day about money at all, but it includes money.
I want to ask a really challenging question just because I feel like I can feel the future listeners in this conversation. Paying to be held. I do it. I think it's great. I can feel that there's this energy coming through the field that is like, but should we be living in a world where we have to generate so much just to be okay? Shouldn't we be trying to create a world where we're held for free, where it's a birthright and where we don't need to generate these great currents of life force energy in order to... Do you get what I'm saying?
I do. Can I just make one clarity point just for those listening? Mum, being held doesn't mean to say Karila's paying for cuddles, although I would
sometimes I do. That we do have cuddle workshops in Brighton. It is a thing. But yes, it is energetic cuddling.
A value of energy that should be rewarded, right? But I was just making that clarity point.
So I would say I'm like kind of a master space holder and do a lot of deep holding, a lot of space holding. In order for me to hold space for others, I need to be held. And it took me a long time to get this.
Yeah.
I love paying people to hold me because for me, that's me giving my energy and the energy of money so they are resourced enough so they can just hold space for me. People are super weird about giving and receiving, right? It's like, can you just allow yourself to receive and can you just allow yourself to give? And I'm a massive overgiver. So I teach people how to receive, and like hilariously, I've been like the world's worst receiver. So for me, when I pay someone, it sort of gives me permission to be like, you are now, that is the role that I'm paying you to just hold me so I can completely let go and I don't have to get into any weird shit about giving back to you or whatever. But it's an exchange. It's just like money is just an exchange. So it can be, there's plenty of people I exchange without money, right? But sometimes I don't want to do that emotional exchange or friendship exchange. I just want to pay someone to hold me. And sometimes that's really what I need. But absolutely, there's all sorts of ways that we can exchange. Money's just one way, and a very valuable way. And because I rejected money for so long and I rejected receiving for so long, and I was in this very idealistic, like, we don't need money. It should all just be happening naturally because this is our true nature. I've done all that and it didn't work, basically. It just didn't work. So, like, if it had worked, that'd been great. And I see a utopian vision for the future where like money changes. Like, so my big kind of mission of my business is like transforming the financial system, one body, business, bank account at a time. I've got a big ass money mission. But the fact is we have to work with where we are right here, right now, and so we can get idealistic about it or it should be X, Y, and Z, but it isn't. So how do we start transforming that system? We have to work with where we are now. This is what I've done in my marriage. This is what I've done in my business. It's like, yes, we want it to be, or it could be, or it should be, but it isn't. So we have to kind of like slowly, and this is the painful journey that most people won't go on, right? With actually building true wealth, financially, wealth in every area of life, is that we have to bridge the gap between the vision and the ideal and the pain of the present, right? And what isn't. And so it's like working within the system as it is to transform it into the future. And I'm talking about the system, but it's like, it's in our energetic system. It's our own energetic system. So I've learned all of this the hard way, having my ass kicked over and over again, because I'm very visionary. I'm very psychic. I'm like always about 20 years into the future. And then I'm having to deal with reality as it is. It's very annoying. It's very frustrating.
What is wealth to you? Like, you've mentioned wealth. What does wealth mean?
Yeah. Good question. So it really is life force energy flowing into every area of life where there's the giving and receiving. So there's flow. There's flow. And that's when there's true wealth in every area, like let's say, health as our wealth. There's an energy flow through our body where I'm like, with my body, it's like deeply listening to this beautiful body, what it needs, what it requires to thrive, and all the resources to support my physical body. When it comes to my business, the same thing. Wealth and business is like, for me, it's a thriving team, right? We're all in alignment, like, and we're building systems. We're building in our business that's like going to really feed and nourish this really true wealth. It's vibrant. It's life force energy is pumping. Same with, working with my clients or working my finances in my marriage. It's the same thing. And like, wealth is when, like, for me, it's all about being my true authentic expression and in full alignment with myself everywhere I go. But that also means doing the work. So I'm not always in that state. It's like getting myself into that flow and then understanding when I'm feeling any sense of lack or any sense of not enough or any sense of scarcity, that all I've done is disconnected from my essential wealthy self, right? Which is essentially that life force energy. So it's all, for me, when we're talking about life force, we're talking about money, we're talking about wealth, it's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like feel like if anybody wants to know what they do with their life force, they just need to look at what they do with their money.
Totally. But what's interesting is that sometimes people can be abundant in one area of life, but really in lack in another. So they'll feel comfortable, let's say, some people are financially very abundant. They've got a lot of money that they will have, they'll hold, they'll grow. It can get a little bit, and some people are incredibly generous financially, but when it comes to love, nothing. Alone. Or no sexual pleasure, whatsoever. There's like lack of intimacy, a lack of emotional intimacy, for example.
To go there, if you take it to like what you do with your money, you know, if I'm just thinking of myself and I'm like, okay, I think of my money patterns, which are similar to my life force patterns. I'm very bust and boom. So I'm very good at receiving. I'm very good at spending. I'm very good. And as you said that, I'm like, yeah, the deficit area of my life, the whole love area, I'm not putting any money there. Like, I'm not putting any energy there.
Yes.
You know? So, like, so it's like, I'm not putting any life force energy there. You know, I'm not, like, I won't pay, I'll invest so much in my business. Would I ever pay for a dating app? No.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You see what I mean? So like, it's like, that's what I mean. Your life force energy is so reflected in the money choices you're making and the patterns you're doing, which is really interesting.
This is it. So I love looking at, if there's something in your life you're not happy with, this is if we can take, like, I call it radical self-responsibility. It's like, okay, where am I putting my energy? Where am I not putting my energy? And everything takes time. So there's like certain areas for certain seasons. But what I've realized is some people are really good. Like, they might go to the gym all the time. They eat really well, but then they're like, I don't know, they're not nurturing their passion or their profession, and they're really miserable in a job, you know? So it's sort of like, there'll be one area you're in a comfort zone with, of feeding your life force energy into or nurturing. And then there's another area where you neglect, but it all comes into where there's a self-neglect, where it all mirrors into a place in ourselves where we're neglecting or we can't receive into. And this is where we hit into, you know, our childhood trauma and all these like patterns, right? So it's super interesting.
Yeah. And I love, as you're speaking, I'm like, neglect is like where you're not sending enough life force energy, or where you're not pumping enough energy.
Yeah.
That's neglect, where you're not putting energy in, like you're not circulating energy through it. That's when something's neglected or energetically deficit.
Yeah. That part is so sad. That part is so sad. And this is what I found, is there's this deep place of like desperate, like it's desperation and loneliness and lack and like alone in the universe. And this part is so unloved, unmet, unheld. And that part, it goes deep into the shadow and deep into the underworld. And we start doing a lot of like deep self-sabotage. And that's when we go into addiction. We're trying to self-soothe, we're trying to grab, we're trying to take, we're trying to fill that void of emptiness in all sorts of crazy ways. That's what human beings, I think we're like the most dangerous from that place. But what I found is, if we can go in and meet those places and love, I call it love it into life, right? Where the shame is, where the pain is, where the lack is, where the scarcity is, we find there's immense freaking power in there. And I've learned all this the hard way myself. Guess what? It's life force energy, all this trapped energy that longs to be realized, that longs to be expressed, that longs to be in the world. But we've just shoved it down and neglected it and judged it and shamed it. And like, we've just done all this. We do it to ourselves, but it's just mostly very unconscious. And that's what I love about looking at your external reality. So wherever you're in any kind of lack externally, go in and be like, what's that mirroring inside of myself? It's really hard to find it. Like, this is usually in a blind spot, and we have so much protection around it and armor around it. It can be quite hard to find it. I can see it. It's one of my superpowers. But if we can kind of get curious, be like, ooh, like, where does this live within me? Oh, how do we unlock it? And this is where we go back to finding the wealth within. And it looks like it's outside, or like, you know, it all looks like it's happening to us and outside of us, but it's all happening inside of us, mirroring from within. It's nuts.
I knew this would happen, that we would fly through the time, and I've got about 500 questions that I still want to ask.
Extend a little bit. Awesome.
Well, just a little bit, and it's something that I talk about in the work that I do. But I'm curious about when you were talking there about going within and looking at areas of life. I think the language that we use is often a signal as well in the areas that we're perhaps lacking. So, I think language is really powerful in sending the kind of beacon out as to where we're excited, where we're aligned, where we feel abundant, and then the areas that feel very scarce, and we get caught in those kind of generalizations of, well, that'll never happen to me. This always happens. I can't have that. And we get kind of stuck in those belief patterns. And so I kind of look for the kind of language signals when I'm speaking to people as a sign as to where they're that scarcity mindset is stronger than the abundant. So I just wondered if you kind of you explore language in any of the work that you do, as well as energy. Because for some people listening, they're like, how on earth do I tap into my energy? But maybe an entry point might be to say, well, just listen for what words you're using, or perhaps try and recognize it in other people around you. And then you can start to hear if you can go, I'm catching them going down a path of destruction on one particular area.
Yeah, that's super smart. And it's actually funny because language has been something I've really struggled with, because I read the language of energy. So it's taken me a long time to figure out how to work with words, because this thing inside of me is quite nonverbal. So it has been a problem for me, actually, is like, how do I bridge the gap with language? But you're 100% right. If anyone says to me something like, I can't afford it, or I'm broke, I'm like, no. And it's like, one of my best friends keeps saying, I don't have any money. I was like, can you just stop saying that? For goodness sake. And like, one is not true. Like, it's just not freaking true. And that's coming from a very deprived part of yourself. And, but it feels true and feels real. So yes, 100% language. I think again, though, it's quite sometimes hard to even notice it. Hard to even notice what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're feeling. Right, all through all the senses, right, is a way to through language, thought, body sensation, emotional feeling. Like what are all those different types of kind of language, if you will, saying? Right? Are they saying there is enough and I'm enough, or they're saying, are we in that deprivation? And the challenge is life is going to reinforce. Right? There's a lot of data and evidence to back your belief and back your story. And that's the challenge, because your life around you is going to reinforce a lot of it. And this idea of like tapping into this life force energy is it's a bit unusual, isn't it? It's not like, I think a lot that we pay people for their life force energy. Like I think about artists and singers and like performers and,
we just had this conversation with a musician, with this one musician who was like, it's the Valhalla episode that we literally recorded. I love how the life force flows through. May the life force be with you, because like we're literally talking about how essentially when you go to a gig, you're paying for the life force of the person performing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to see where we're not like, we might pay someone else for it, or we're not really like claiming it inside of us and being like, that's just an example of what's possible for yourself, where we still go into self-denial. And so, yeah, language, sorry, back to you, Fiona. Language is a really great entry point, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to be obsessed, Karila, next time with looking at the root words or the root meaning of some of the words that we were just discussing.
Where the money? Should we do the root word of money?
Yeah.
Root word of money. Love it. One of my favorites. It's from manita, which is a surname of goddess Juno, because they originally printed money next to the temple of Juno, and it literally means watched over by the goddess, which means that money is cyclical, which means that we have a winter. In every money journey we go on, there is going to be a winter, and then a spring, and then a summer, and then an autumn. And I think that one of the big fundamental problems that we're having is in our patriarchal society, we're trying to make money masculine. And then we're like, why isn't it just going in a straight line? You know, like, why isn't it just going uphill? And then we get surprised. But yeah, it means watched over by the goddess. Your feminine energy has to be in charge of the money.
Well, I think we've proven that in this episode for sure. The feminine energy should be in charge of the money. And I'm just, again, conscious of our time because it's flown by so quickly. Was there anything, Lara, you wanted to reflect on in our conversation?
Well, my life force is definitely stronger than when I began. So whoop, whoop, the podcast is working. And I could talk for hours. I'm going to stop talking now because otherwise I won't stop.
I want you to come back and talk.
I know. And I apologize if there was a little bit of life force energy going on behind me. I'm in a house of teenagers who are energetic. So if there was any noise in the background, I do apologize. Hopefully it was minimal. But thank you so much, Lara. I feel well and truly topped up, and I'm going to be thinking big tomorrow and setting out those, I'm going to call it my impact number. What's my number tomorrow? So I love that. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been so interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Who should we speak to next?
Ooh. Bodhi. Kai Flow.
Oh, I'd love to speak to her. That would be amazing.
Bodhi's business is all about flow and life force.
Well, thank you so much again, and we will share where everyone can find out more about your work and get in contact with you. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing all of this courageous work. It is so hard to bring it from one realm into another. And I think you do it with so much grace and so much kaboom power. And so it's been an absolute honor to have you. Kaboom. May the life force be with you. And we hope to have you back in all of our many swirly capacities that we can have you back in.
Thank you. That means the world to me. Thank you so much.
Ooh, mama.
How's your life force?
Yeah, my life force has been really topped up from that conversation. How about yours?
Yeah, I it sounds so simple on paper, and we didn't go deep on the kind of manifestation side of it. It was kind of touched on all the way throughout, a little bit of affirmation, a little bit of positive reinforcement, that thinking big, which kind of creeps into kind of like the visualization. And I know for some people listening, they might go, oh my God, that's like too much of the magic. Like, how does that work? But when you start to think about how you think about money, how you think about different areas of your life, I love the love life thing because that's my thing. I can run businesses, but I can't get a date, And so,
have you invested in an app?
No, and even when I'm here in Australia, people are like, "Why don't you go on a date?" And I'm like, "Because I'm in Australia." And they're like, "So, go do it." Scarcity mindset and well, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, and like all of these like negatives that we put in our way, when actually I love that Lara said, you know, that number, that impact number is the size of how big you want your life to be and how big your life force can be. And when you start to flip that, you go, yeah, make it huge. Love that.
And I loved how we were obviously talking big, and like I could just feel the resistance to that going that big as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you can feel all the things that then come up about like, is this being a good person to be big in the world?
You know what? In the thinking big, do you know one of the people who is considered like the master manifester? And he actually, when he was dirt broke, hadn't done a single acting gig, he wrote himself a check for $10 million. And that's Jim Carrey. And he kept it with him until he signed his $10 million. So maybe we think big and we think we'll get Jim Carrey on some point down the line.
Do you write my life must be with you a check for $10 million?
From Jim Carrey.
Maybe he'll be our guest one day. He's got a lot of life.
That's what I meant. He's a manifester. But yeah, you know, why not? Why not believe in the art of the possible? And you know, when we cut ourselves off from that energy and that excitement and that, you know, positivity, then that's when, you know, we don't get what we want to receive. But also, you know, how big are we giving as well?
How big are we giving? How big are
you willing to give, I should say, as well. You know, that has to flow. As you say, it's cyclical. It goes around and around, give and receive. So I love that.
Yeah, I love Lara. She's so brave. You know, she's so brave.
Cool. Well, we will definitely share all her details along with this episode so everyone can check out her fabulous work, and we'll get all her socials up on there as well. But thank you so much for introducing us to Lara Karila, and I'm off to think of my big number. How about you?
I can't wait to hear your big number. May the life force be with you. May the life force and the big numbers be with you.
Guys.
We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.